My friend, my friend. My name is WAGO Howard. Today we're going to talk about writing a melody. Now, a lot of music that many composers write already has central themes. They've got a foundation of musical theory. So if you're just starting to play an instrument and you're trying to figure out how to write a song and you want it to extend more than just a couple chords that you play on a guitar or a couple notes that you play on a piano, then maybe this is going to be the lesson for you. In this, we're going to discuss three major points. One, how to write something on a staff to get individual note notation so you can play that melody again to understand what the themes, what the different intervals are, and how it correlates to a given key signature. Now, there are many different types of compositions. There are many types of composers and arrangers. There are many different genres. There are a superfluous amounts of subgenres in genres. And as far as music goes, you can really combine many of these to have a fusion of most concepts. Now, there are periods of music where certain themes and certain styles and certain ideas are used more than others. However, you don't have to stay or adhere to just those. What we continue to teach or consider the foundation of musical theory, it relies upon doing a couple things that we're going to talk about on this side of the board. So, for this, we're going to talk about what this is. On this side, if you've got a program like Finale or Fruit Loops or GarageBand, I think the newer one that I'm working with too is called Dorcio, Dorcio. I guess I should learn how to pronounce that. Anywho, it's a fun program. Gonna have a bit of a learning curve, but that's okay. That goes with anything in life, doesn't it? What I'll be trying to do is come up with a couple ways in real time. I don't do any editing on this channel, so I will try to get a little bit more efficient so these aren't 45-minute videos. They're like 9-minute videos on how to just create a lead sheet and stuff like that. As always, if you have time, I would love for you to be here on Tuesdays. Every single Tuesday, we talk about some sort of theory. I think last week we talked about how to chart a song, meaning you would go to your music that you've been writing, say you've got a couple choice chords you've been playing, how to put them on a lead sheet that looks a lot like this. On a lead sheet, we use mostly slashes to denote rhythms, and then we just keep up a constant beat. On a program like Finale or Dorco, you absolutely can use the same staves or staff right here to write those melodies. Now what that means, let me see if this volume's working right now.
Staff right here.
Absolutely. So what this means is you can use this up here as two different sections. Now there are many different clefs. Most music in the Western ear is written for two particular clefs, the treble clef and then the bass clef. Where they are centered is what the actual note or notation of these lines are. If you don't already have a foundation of music, understanding what a chord is or a triad, what the two notes of, when you add them together, being stacked as a major or a minor third, as a tertiary harmony, then I would say to go to some of these live sessions that are on this channel and review some of the concepts that are found on Tuesdays. We're going to discuss just a little bit of that right here so we could hop over here and start articulating ourselves within a certain key. I would say don't jump ahead until you're ready to rock and roll on these. Here we go. So when we're starting off looking at our staff paper, if you're writing with your hand, that's great. Make sure that you make it nice and visible and legible. If you're using a program, make sure that you save it every couple minutes. Nothing worse than writing something and oopsidentally getting rid of it. So for here, a basic concept for any piece of music, we look for two central themes. They are considered the key signature and they are considered the time signature. When we have something along the lines of, let's say, 6/8, we would still put this compound, ooh, that's not the best of pens, we would still put this compound meter in the same location that we would put any meter, splitting it between the B line. When we put that time signature on the B line, we do not need to put it anywhere else except for in the beginning of the measure. Each time you do this, you don't have to continue this down through your stave because it doesn't change. However, whenever I split a page or I go to a new section, I will always put 6/8, or the time signature rather. So a very important thing to have is called the time signature. It tells you what your tempo or your meter is. When you know what your tempo or your meter is, you then have the ability to use notes within a certain time period. When we mark off something with a bar, it goes all the way through the grand staff. When you have a treble clef, that the little circle that it has is centered around the G, the treble clef being made as such, when you remove the top part and leave the bottom, that should look like a lowercase g. Kind of abstract, but it is. So when you see this as being a G clef, as the treble clef is, this line right here, any note that is right here is absolutely going to be a G note. So when we put a note head on a measure, we have a full circle. This clef here, when we examine the treble clef, and this being a G note, we can put a line on that whole tone. Now, the durations of these notes would dictate where you begin your phrasing. In this particular one, we're going to keep a static tone. I'm going to draw 2 G's. These are both half notes, and I'm going to tie them together so it goes through a measure. Anybody who reads a little bit of music would be able to ascertain that when we do this, let's say we're in the key of G. When we write in our key signature, which is one of the other really two pertinent pieces of information inside of a piece of music when writing a melody, is you want to put it on the F line and then the F line. If we take this G and we count up our spaces and our lines, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. F natural is the top line of the treble clef. So when we put a sharp, it sharpens that natural to an F sharp. Thusly, the scale that is not like C major is G major. And thusly, from there, we continue to add sharps. So at this point, what I'd really like to do is just show the circle of fifths. It's something that we should write right next to the piece of paper and or the program or have memorized in our head. When writing, this allows us to have a quick reference tool. So what I'd like to do is just show this. Here, I'm not going to actually just put it right here. Don't have to do too many examples here. So the idea is we get our time signature and our key signature. Now our time signature can have simple meter, and I would suggest if you're starting to write in any of your tones, to try your simple meter at something like 2-2, 2-4, 4-4. We can do 3-4. These are all ideas of having one type of tone, like 3-4 is a waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It would make sense then if we compound these meters, or make them a little bit more complex. If we add these together, 3 plus 3 is 6, 4 plus 4 is 8. 6/8 is a compound type of meter. We could also have something like 12/8. See how these measures have larger numbers and they are hypothetically just two simple measures put together, even if you were to do 7/8. 7/8 is quite literally two different measures put together, and just like mathematics, you always keep that denominator the same there. So, knowing how to just write in some time signatures and then starting to get accustomed to them, it's great to know how to count them. Now, this isn't the video for that, but like 1, 2, 3 is our waltz. If you double those, that's our 6/8. Notice how the clapping that I'm doing is faster than just quarter notes, which would have been 4. Now we've got 8th notes. You could also have like 16th notes on the bottom if you want, but that's awfully fast, at least for me playing. When we see our key signature, the reason why the circle of fifths is so very valid and important, it allows us to see the instruments like our voice or the piano or a sitar or anything really in a different way, because then we could assign tones to this staff and then start writing. So as I said, it's called the circle fifth. So of course we're going to draw a circle first. The first key that has no sharps and flats is called C major. In C major, when we play all of the tones, we get something called C Ionian. Now, the spacing of this is a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. The real important takeaway here is that in the key of C, there are no sharps and no flats. And when we utilize our circle fifths, we can find ourselves going to different keys, like G major. Reason why this is called the circle of fifths is because we go up a perfect fifth. Now, being able to understand how to put the notes on here, you're going to need a little bit of basic music foundation, like the chord construction. And we're going to talk about that just in a minute, because what we're going to want to do is play a melody and then figure out what the individual notes that we chose, what type of chord structure can go behind it. Almost like tone leading or chord leading, we'd be using a very specific grouping of notes that are inside of a key signature in the beginning. You don't have to stay within the key signature when writing, but I would suggest if you're brand new at writing something, you should stay within the diatonic 7 of a key signature. That's what the circle fifths helps us to do. This key has one sharp. That sharp is F sharp. So when we go this way for the circle fifths, we are going up in perfect fifths. The opposite of a perfect fifth is called a perfect fourth. When we look at intervals like C to G, it's called a P5 or a perfect fifth. When we go the opposite direction, we get a perfect fourth. Now, give me 2 seconds. Let me readjust this. I do apologize. I think I made this a little too small. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Maybe that shall help. Oh, there we go. All right, so what we're seeing is if we play up a perfect fifth and take this G and go down below, we get a perfect fourth. What's really cool about that is it shows us on our line right here that if we play G, skip A, skip B, skip C, and then play a D, G to a D is a perfect fifth. If we take that note that could be on the second line from the top and we put it on the space below the treble clef, the E line, right below the E is the D, and then right below the D is middle C. If we see our D note being right there, we then know spacing, intervals. There are notes in between them. In the beginning, let's try writing in the diatonic chord. So going up 5 and then going down 4. Well, gee golly whiz. If we were to play C to F, we are just talking about going up 4 notes in namesake only. That's how I describe the circle of fifths, and here's what it looks like. If we're capable of going a perfect fifth up, then we could go a perfect fifth down. If we go a perfect fifth down, that is 7 semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When we play C to F, that gives us a fifth. If we played C to F here, that gives us a fourth. Do you see how switching them back and forth doesn't matter if they're above or below when you have one note in the middle? It will have equal distance from a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth. This takes a little bit to get into as far as like understanding the complexity of intervals, but what we're looking for are 4 interesting states of being. Those 4 are perfect to perfect, augmented to diminished, major to minor, and then we have the opposite of every one of these. Perfect to perfect just flips itself. We would also have diminished to augmented, and then minor to major. And the reason why these are super interesting is because you could only have a prime, a 1. Can you see that down there? I'll get rid of this nonsense. You could have a perfect prime, you could have a perfect 4th, a perfect 5th, and then a perfect 8th, or a octave. You could also have compound octaves. So if you have a P8 or a C8, what you were talking about is going up the stave. Middle C was right here. An octave from C is here. That is a P8. To go up another grouping, so you're on the second line above the treble clef on one of those ledger lines, that would make a compound 8th. You could have them go all the way up the board. As far as our augmented or diminished, every single note can be augmented or diminished. Meaning, if you have like a C, whenever you go sharply, you are augmenting the note. Let's say we had an F. F sharp would be an augmented half step. If you were to have like a B and flatten it or take it down, you would be diminishing it or falling flat. So the way we view these kind of intervals is if you can name 2 notes, let's say we do one right here, let's do it in the key of D. C has no sharps, D has 1 sharp, that sharp is F sharp. So if I were to say C, D, E, F, G, G, A, B, C, D, we find that D major now has 2 sharps. We retain the F sharp from the key of G, and now in the key of D, we have the F and then the C space. When we go down here, we're going to want to mark the F line, and if we haven't shown it yet, the G clef, when you got rid of it, looks like a G, and that's why the G is on this line. Well, when we play the F clef, if we just draw little marks in between, that kind of looks like an F, if you do a little fine tuning maybe. Ta-da! So the F is going to be right here on the line. You're going to want to put it right down through it. And then the C, if we were to count, let's say, up from the bottom note of the bass clef. The bottom note of the bass clef is a G note. So when we say G, A, B, C, the C is the second space from the bottom. This is a line that has been tied together by a beginning. This is our grand staff, and it has a treble clef and a bass clef. I know the key signature is the key of D major, or D major could have its relative minor, B minor. The reason why I use the circle of fifths is I could have it visually put into my brain after drawing it so many times that I know that I have 3 different ways of establishing what a minor and a major are. Most people get as far as this with their chord knowledge. When you play a chord like C, E, and G, you achieve a major because the 2 dyads that you are using are a major third and a minor third. When you flatten the mediant, the third, the middle note in betwixt the 2, the perfect 5th, you achieve a minor chord. Now, there are more than just 3 notes in a scale or a family. One of the ways we discern on how to play a C major versus a C minor, common chord substitution of the half step, we would have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. To achieve a minor scale from a major scale, you would flatten the third, you would flatten the 6th, and you would flatten the 7th. This is true for every scale. C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and C gives C minor the same key signature as E flat major. When we go this way and we count 4 notes, we find ourselves going around the circle of force. C, D, E, F. F, G, A, B flat. B flat, C, D, E flat. E flat, F, G, A flat. A flat then goes 4 notes away to D flat. D flat goes 4 notes away to G flat, and then 4 notes away to C flat. And the reason why I'm writing these kind of interesting is because these bottom three generally overlap. All of these have two names. They're called enharmonic equivalences. When we have a note like a C major, it's part of many different scales. In fact, we have a C in every one of these scales, but it's not always C natural. Sometimes it's C sharp, sometimes it's C flat. There are instances when you're playing in a minor key into which you're going to need a double sharp, and you will need a double flat. If you've never seen double sharps or double flats, fun. The idea is it's not too hard of a concept. If we have an F note, an F sharp is a half step above by augmenting. A double sharp just augments another half step. An F double sharp makes a G natural. When writing, we don't say things twice. So I wouldn't say C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, C flat, C. Why would I say C twice? And what happened to B? That's the basic thought behind it. So when we're using these accidentals, we use those to notate key signature and then assign to the 7 notes that are in the music alphabet: A, B, C, D, and E, F, and G. So when we go here, all of these can be augmented or diminished, and then only the 2, the 3, the 6, and the 7 will be major or minor. If this is not making sense, watch. We're going to pick that key of E flat, and we're going to pick that key of C minor. Visually, on the circle fifths, you could do a little shaka, and you could go E flat to C. E flat major has a key signature of 3 flats: B flat, E flat, A flat. So when we write these here, we need to find them correlating with the notes on the staff. So if we were to go all the way here and go G, A, B, we would have our first note, B flat. You would go up, B, C, D, E, and then A flat. When doing this, that gives you the spelling of E flat major, or its relative minor, C minor. When we move over, the key of B flat has 1 flat. Its relative minor, meaning it shares the same key signature, is G minor. So when we play B flat major, B flat major, C minor, D minor, E flat major, F major, G minor, A diminished, B flat. The relative minor would be seen through the eyes of the 1. We would have G minor, A diminished, B flat major, C minor, D minor, E flat major, F major, G minor. We would write them with Roman numeral analysis when we're trying to analyze music, and we would view any piece of music through the eyes of the major or the minor. And you will tell minor has more of a somber, melancholy feel. If we were to say this is in the key of B flat major, you can even have your minor chords. But if we had a song that was more that being written in G minor a little bit more than you were in B flat major. It just happens to be a good way to write and try to see those together. So, seeing our circle fifths being able to give us our major or our minor, like in the key of C major, the second way you could view it is if you were to just go up to the major sixth. Hence, C to C sharp is called a minor second. That is the shortest distance in the Western ear. Between C and C, a perfect octave, you have 12 minor seconds. That is called a C chromatic scale. All of the notes played all together gives you every single tone in between an octave. C to C sharp is a minor second, then a major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, augmented fourth. It's a little further away from your distance of your consonant notes. That's a dissonance. It feels really unstable. It adds a lot of tension. Perfect fifth is one of our consonant notes. When we go and augment that fifth, we get a minor sixth or an augmented fifth. Remember, all notes have two names. G, G sharp, A flat, enharmonic equivalences. So when we play A flat here, if we would have kept going with our C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp. Yeah, G sharp is an A flat. G, A, B, C, D, E, F. F sharp is our G. When we keep going around the circle, we could have a B double flat, and that's an A. We could have an E double flat, that's a D. We just choose not to write in these hypothetical keys because moving around with those accidentals like a sharp or a flat or a double sharp or a double flat gets a lot for sight reading. However, there are composers and times to do it. So, two ways to view. We could either use the circle fifths and remember 4 notes away in the circle fifths, even though it's represented as just a chord, like this is A major. But if we view it for another purpose and give the circle fifths and fourths a secondary feel, G to E minor, that's our relative major minor. C to A minor, D to B minor. A flat, you betcha. When we go to A flat, F minor is the relative minor, meaning they share a key signature. If A major has how many sharps or flats? None. 1, 2, 3, 4. I say, how many notes are in a diatonic scale? There are 7. How many flats are in A flat? There are 4. There are 3 sharps in the key of A. If you check that, none, 1, 2, 3. F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. That's how I use the circle fifths. If I wanted to know how many sharps were in the key of B major, I would find B major on the sharp side, because when we raise up a fifth, we go sharply. When we go down a perfect fifth, or we just count up 4 in namesake, we get flat notes. So the reason why this is called the circle of fourths and the circle of fifths, rather than describing them in perfects, because that's just basically to figure out intervals and where they lie in chords and what chords share them. The way that we view this is if I go up, choosing the note that I'm on in a diatonic key always. When you're in a chromatic scale, all of those notes come after that first note. I would not say C, C sharp. I would say C sharp, D, D sharp, E. That gives me 12 tones. When I'm playing with 7 notes, I must first say that first one note. C, D, E, F. 4 notes away. The truth is, you're actually going 5 semitones. When you see the semitones as being ta-da! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect fourth. No matter where you do that from. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ta-da! So, what we're trying to get at here is how to put all these notes out on your staff, utilize the circle fifths, see how keys have a signature like D, but it also has a relative minor. How to use the circle of fifths. The second way to figure out how a key has sharps or flats, or how to convert any major into a minor, would be like this. We're talking about the key of B. B has 5 sharps. There are 7 notes in a diatonic scale, so take away those 5 sharps. B flat has 2 flats. Well, let's analyze. B would have F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. Okay, that sounds good. And then B flat would have 2 flats. That checks out. So what I would do in the beginning is starting to do this. B, C, D, E, F, G, A. B, C, D, E, F, G, A. when we utilize these 7 notes and we assign our sharps, F sharp is in the key of G, C sharp's in the key of D, G sharp's in the key of A, D sharp is in the key of E, and then A sharp is the last sharp in the key of B. Each one of these coming right before the 1. It is the D-do, that final note that's added onto every scale. Key of B, 5 sharps. Notice that the only 2 notes inside the key of B major that do not have sharps are B and E. Well, those are natural. So if we flattened everything, we would have then a B flat, C natural, D natural, E flat, F natural, G natural, A natural diminished. So this is how I view the circle, using a B flat and a B to correlate, to check to see if your key signatures are right. So when you're writing, you could do this very important step. All right. Last thing we want to do here is talk about a whole tone. These are half tones. These are worth 2 beats. If we were to fulfill a measure right here, we would need to have 6 more beats for this measure. We have 2 beats right here. That means this measure is missing 4 beats. I have the option of either putting in a whole, because that would express 4, but in 6/8 it would express 6. That's a bad example. I could put in 2 more half notes if I wanted to take up the measure, and then I would tie them together so it would seamlessly feel like that. Or I could use a half note and put a double dot after it. Either way, you're going to be filling 4 different beats. This measure is called a pickup measure because it does not have all 6 beats. When I play this, the most common feel is the 8th note. So sometimes you want to write those in there to have a little feeling. I'm just going to put a quarter here. We're going to go up in nature to a B. Last thing that you should really know is a B note can be played with the stem going up or down, just like the D line on the bass clef. There's a lot of information in here, and what you're going to want to go back is, if you don't know how to put notes on the staff, is what the landmark series is. You can learn a bunch of different things, like Every Good Boy Does Fine, or Face, or Good Boys Do Fine Always. There are a lot of ways to put like ideas in your head about how to remember these lines. I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on in music. There's really no reason to add cows or Very Good Boys into any of this equation. There are 7 notes. Learn where they are on the staff. The best way that I could explain it is using your circle of fifths, figure out what your relative major and minors are, and then figure out the correlation between the two. I aforementioned that the bass has a G. The relative minor of G is E. If you can view this and you can pick up on this, that means that the major and the minor have correlating notes here. The B line is up here. The D line is right here. Well, D major has a relative minor of B. That's how I remembered in the beginning where these lines are. And then the next thing you do is just this. When you see a D, B, and a G, doesn't matter what order they're in, you will start to see these as being chords, because when you stack notes like this, that looks like a triad with a perfect eighth. You will get really used to seeing these intervals of a major third and a minor third. You will even get really good at seeing accidentals that change that mediant, so the position of your major third and your minor third swap places, and you tertiarily stack a minor third then a major third, making a minor chord. Augmented chords are major third plus major third, and diminished chords are minor third plus minor third. Those are the stackings of all of your chords. Which one was this? G, so... Those are all triads for every instrument throughout space and time. At least in the Western era. We don't have microtonal stuff. So, finally, after the explanation of what this is, we have whole tones, which are worth full measures, half beats, which are worth 2 beats, quarter notes, which are worth 1 beat. You can also take both of these, and as I aforementioned, you can put a dot after it to add half of the intended value. If you want to put another dot, it'll add half of the next intended value. How many beats is a double dotted quarter note worth? 2. Weird, huh? The next note after that, we would take our 8th note only in namesake and Filling in the note head, Notenkoffen. When we fill that in, we're going to have a quaver right here, or a flag, and then most people see this as being connected to another eighth note. When you view that, you're viewing eighth notes. That is an eighth note and an eighth note, and it is counted as one and. Every time that we have an eighth note like this, and then we play anything after an eighth note, it adds a beam, and then an eighth note, thusly giving us 16th notes. This keeps going so forth and so on, and you just add beams. If you're talking about respectively the rests, you would have a hat being drawn on the middle line. Generally, always. You would do it like this. That's a whole rest. That is worth the entire measure. Half note rest, flip that upside down. If you have a quarter rest, it looks like this. Mine's not the prettiest. An eighth note rest would have a dot, swipe, and down. And then 16th would just keep adding flags. 32nd note, 64th note, 128th note. It keeps going on and on and on and on. Yeah, the Landmark series is on the YouTube channel on the playlist. I think it was done in the last Circle of Fifths episode, and it was definitely done in charting. However, I could do another video for the Landmark series today. Maybe keep your eye out for that. Good question. Thank you. When we're doing our 16th notes, 32nd notes, these are just considered our rests. If you're using a program like Finale or that Dorsio, it adds the rest for you now. You don't even have to think about it. It's pretty cool. If you have a note in one of those programs and you want to get rid of the note, and it will delete it and just add it. So you don't have to do a lot of brain work. So all of this is the prerequisite for today's session. Today's session talks about how to form a melody. So, just so that our brain doesn't melt, I'm going to take this and we're going to look here. How many sharps and flats are there in the first measure? There are no sharps and flats in either this or here. These are extended measures, but we would have 4 measures right here, each containing 4 beats, and the quarter note is going to get the beat. The reason being is, if we were to go over here and look at our music explanation, we have the quarter notes containing 1 beat. These are worth all the beats. These are worth 2 beats, 1 beat. This is a quarter of that or an eighth of that. We would have half of this intended beat, meaning you could fit inside of a quarter note 1, 2, 3, 4. You could put eighth notes. So you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If you do 16 notes, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. See how there are 4 beats? Well, 30-second notes. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. These are how we subdivide all these, and that's really how drummers play some of these really cool riffs. Practicing these on any instrument, it takes some time, but you would play them either legato or staccato to form a little bit of dynamic tension between these notes in correlation with the other ones. So what we're seeing here is when I get rid of all of this nonsense, we're using the key of C. Now I'd like to redraw the Circle of Fifths right now, and we're going to just draw it through the eyes of C major, and we're going to put up our little legend. And this is what I would suggest to anybody starting to do part writing. Part writing is a mechanism where you are writing for a choral or an ensemble or a group or a grouping of a section. The way we do these is you kind of write for sections, like the violin section or the orchestral section, the choral section. Most music that is either secular or non-secular comes from the religious aspect of it. Most of the terminology we have from this relates to things that were utilized in 12th, 14th century. 17th century for sure. Different periods. If you don't know anything about the periods, check out the Romantic era or the Classical era. Schubert, Bach, Beethoven, Mendelssohn. You will absolutely love it. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, meow, meow. 4, 5, 6, and then 7. These are Roman numerals. The uppercase is a major. The lowercase is a minor. In the key of C major, we had C, G, F. We've got D, E, A, and B. Now this is our circle of fifths, starting from F. F, G, A, B, C, C, D, E, F, G, G, A, B, C, sharp, D, D, E, F, sharp, G, A, B, C, sharp, D, E, E, F, sharp, G, sharp, A, B. There are 7 notes in a scale. These are the major chords. These are the minor chords. And this rhyme here, that's the diminished. So when we write these up here, we get our tones. Now, you don't write these in lowercase letters when you're doing chordal analysis. I just write those in lowercase letters so you know the correlation between major and minor. Eventually, you are going to want to swap these out to just these. Whenever you're writing chord pro, you definitely want to just put down the chord. When doing Roman numerals, I write my charts with numbers just in case I want to change the key. If I wrote a chart out and it says G minor, F major, I know what key I'm in, but the idea is, what if I don't want to play it in that key? What if I wanted to go to a different key or have a switch or a modulation? It's much easier to read Roman numerals than it is to read chord pro. That's just personally me. This is how we view the circle of fifths. From this information, I would put out my relative minor, and we would view this as being the 1, the 4, and the 5. A lot of music is da 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 da. Remember that you could always swap out the F for the D minor, the A minor for the C, and the E for the G. Even when you're playing them together with other people, those chords sound great over the top. What they do when they correlate, they just create extended chords. Rather than having 3 notes, you have 4. One triad sounds major, one triad sounds minor, or diminished, depending on where you put them. This is how I look at this. Now, let's do a little review on what this melody line looks like. In the beginning, we have 4 notes per measure. Now notice we have a quarter worth 1 beat, a quarter worth another beat, and then we've got another quarter. That is 3 beats. The aforementioned eighth notes fit inside of a quarter. Remember, 2 beats per 1. So this measure has 1, 2, 3, 4, and. That is what I'm thinking while I'm playing. The feeling of these notes looks and sounds like this. C, E, G, G, G. The next measure has the bottom space, and since there is no sharp, it's an F natural. And it's an eighth note, counted as 1 and. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 and. We have a rest and a rest. We are moving through the notes of having 1 beat, 1 beat. This is 1 and 2, 3, 4. Remember, when we have a little top hat that's upside down, it is worth 2 rests, the lack of notes. Notice here how we have a central theme happening. We've gone from 1 note, ha, 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 ha. Here we have the same central theme happening. This is called a motif. In music, when you hear something like that do, that's the central theme or the motif. It's something that keeps happening. Even when you're trying to jump back up to that in that, what is that, bar 14 or something like that, Moonlight Sonata, yay. Going through the process of seeing these notes all line up on 1, 2, 3, 4, and some people like to write out their tempos before they play. These markings correlate to the measure it's under. If this marking were to extend further than this, let's say it went from here to here, we would be going from the dynamic marking of mezzo piano, meaning medium soft, and then getting successfully quieter with a decrescendo. The opposite of a decrescendo is this one. It's called a crescendo. It's to slowly and gradually get louder. As you could tell, the tone of this and the dynamics of this has a quieter tone, even quieter that quiets itself, and then it jumps into a mezzo forte, a little bit louder, and then it slowly gets louder until it goes back to mezzo piano, meaning a little bit soft, medium soft, not too terribly bad. That first line that we're reading here, we have our top note. When we move from there, we're playing our C, C, B, G. Interesting. Generally, you don't want any leaps or bounds. You want to move in step when writing a harmony. When writing a melody. The reason being is if you write too many notes in there and you're jumping around, chances are you're going to jump from a consonant to a dissonant. You really want to stay within the fashion of the chord. Now, we haven't even talked about this, but over the top of that melody, we would have some sort of chord going on below it. Well, that's what this does for us on the other side. It allows us to view our melody. Central theme, it's not the same exact thing. It changed here, but it's still using an eighth note. It's moving. The idea that I was talking about, that there's multiple ways to write a melody and put chords behind that. If you were writing for 3-part, meaning soprano, alto, and tenor, or you're writing for 4-part, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, you would look at these notes differently after doing chordal analysis. Along with moving in step, you would also want to not make large leaps or bounds to cause dissonance and jump around your scale. And then along with that, you would want to make sure that you're not doing any parallel movements of notes together. Meaning if you had a tenor line that was doing this, you wouldn't want to hear something like, it would be just too much. If you're moving using parallel force, if that's what you're tending to do, then yes, absolutely. Can you play me a song? Momentary Life? Balkan sings, yeah, let me get through the concept of this and I'll try and wrap it up. I'll look at that. If you could put a link in the description, that'd be totally groovy too, so I don't have to Google it. Yeah, I could take a little request here. Let me finish this centralized thought. When moving through the circle fifths and you know what your chord signatures are, if you start writing in the beginning using diatonic notes or the notes that are inside the scale, you can see as these majors, minors, and diminished have a very special place inside of our structure here. We can have our 3-chord, our 2-chord, our relative minor, and then our 5-chord all playing a special part here. And we're kind of getting low on time, and if I'm going to do a request, I definitely need to hurry this up. So we've covered time signature. We've covered the concept of being able to play through a key signature. The only 2 things and bits of information I guess I really didn't talk about here is if there were to be a key change, or you were to go to another key after analysis of your melody, you would put a double bar and then you would change the key. And sometimes up here in parentheses, if we went from the key of C to the key of A, you would just put your sharps here. So you would immediately know, oh, gee golly, we're going into the key of A. However, we're not in the key of A there, we're staying in the key of C. Our central theme should have some sort of basis behind here. So the idea is, what note is this? This is a C note. When you write out all of your triads, 1, 3, 5, your dyad and your dyad, the first dyad you get is your E and your C. Therefore, that major third forms the beginning of your C major. The next is going to be E to G, which is a minor. Remember, to get a major, you must have a major third plus a minor third stacked. The opposite of that makes a minor, which is D, F, and A. If you're familiar at all with a little bit of music, in the key of D, there are 2 sharps, as we said from that example. It would make that third note an F sharp. D, F sharp, A is a D major. Flat in the median, minor. There is no D major in the key of C major. There is only a D minor. When completing this, we'd have E, G, B as being our minor third, F, A, C is our 4, G, B, D, A, C, E, and then B, D, and F. When you can do that from memory and not need to look at that, and you just absolutely know the difference between a B major and a B minor has to do with that D sharp and D natural, F sharp and F natural. Or actually, F sharp stays there, but B diminished, B, D, F. You would be able to see that all these notes, major, minor, diminished. You would also even be able to do your augmented. And the reason why a lot of people don't know about augmented chords is they're not found naturally in any of our do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Inside of a major scale, there is no augmented. There is only the diminished as the lending or leading tone. Meaning, next time you're playing a song, try to change any diminished chord or 5 dominant, the 5 chord made into a dominant, meaning if we're playing in the key of C, the 5 chord is G. To add another note that's not the major 7, you would have a dominant. It's called a G7 and it acts as a secondary dominant or passing tone. It's wonderful to know about, but this is not the video to describe that. That also is a concept we covered in our live series on Ask a WAGO. It will be appropriately titled that as well. So, moving through here, what note is this? This is a C. All right, we have the possibility of having a 1 chord here. We have the possibility of having a 4 chord here, and the possibility of having a 6 chord here. I think, since it's the beginning of a phrasing, we should start with the 1 chord, the prime, the foundation, the tonic. If we start with the tonic and we move towards the dominant, we're going to cause a lot of tension. We can also cause a little bit of tension by putting it to the subdominant, meaning the dominant and the subdominant are where all the other notes want to go to. And then once you are there, those notes want to go away from there. Using writing ideas like not moving in parallel motion with voices, not doing huge leaps or bounds. You never want to jump to a dissonant note from a consonant note. You will start writing some more pleasing melodies staying in a diatonic 7. Since this is here, I just would really like to just call this the 1 chord. Now, if you are doing music theory analysis and you are not from America, this would be explained in a different way. I would suggest finding a channel that explains on how to do this with the nomenclature and the vernacular that they use. Rather than calling a quarter note or an eighth note an eighth note, we would call them a minim or a quaver. The reason being is the different vernacular will help you on both sides. The reason why I'm saying that, there are 2 different ways to explain this in both of the English language, is when we play in the, let's say the British way, you would have like a 1, A, B, and a C for your inversions. In America, over here, we would say 6 is our first inversion. You don't have to put the hyphen, sorry. Second inversion. We would have different ways of writing these that we would know what inversion these are and which note comes first. And if you don't know what an inversion is, when we write out a chord, it doesn't need to be 1, 3, 5. You can write it out 3, 5, 1. It looks the exact same too. C major, first inversion, C major, second inversion, and there is no third inversion when using just our arpeggiated notes, 1, 3, 5. If we were to play something like that arpeggio with a major 7, we would have something along the lines of this chord right here is a C major 7. So, when we're trying to view what this would be, when playing that over here and trying to associate notes to it, this would be our first root position. This is our first inversion. When we move these, second inversion. And then moving them again, third inversion. Being able to see inversions, depending on how many notes you have in it, having triads or tetrachords, that extended note really changes the way that you view music. In fact, best part about this, I know it's getting towards the end of this, it's very simple, but we would actually just play this out, write the chords that feel appropriate. Now, here, you can put a chord on every single one of these, but then I'd be doing like... And I don't really want to have the pulse of eighth notes because we're not feeling a 1 and 2 and. We're feeling 1, 2, 3, 4. So here, what I think I'd like to do is just G, A, B, go here. Our middle C is right here. We can play it here or there, maybe write it down with a lower note as well. we can play our melody. Feels like a D minor would work. Now, what's our D minor? It's a 2 chord. We're playing it in root position, so I'm just going to leave it right there. This one as well. Here, let's see what we have. Oh, sorry, wrong phrasing. Same central theme, kind of fun. You don't have to write this out, or you can. This one would have something like our, we're not doing an inversion, let's throw it here. So a G, A, B, C, E, G. You can use these as whole notes, and it's just probably going to last the whole time. So C, E, G. And you could move them all over. Just one of them, doesn't matter. You'll be able to tell. The next one here, same thing, but we're going to be playing a D. So we're going to play the D, F, and A. That makes a triad. Again, we're going to want to carry that over because it just makes sense to not play a whole lot. Remember the dynamic markings at this point. Oh, at this point, we looked. Well, this is a D, F, and an A. It makes sense that this is our 1 chord, but does it have to be? We could have done something like... Since there is a D right here, also in the key of G, also in the key of D diminished, we could have had D diminished maybe. I don't like that. Not a big fan because it's lying there on the G. If we had G, it would be fun. But I think going to a D minor sounds a lot better than moving through the process of seeing that one, right? So I'm going to keep it as a D minor, and then we could go back and change it. If want, you could put parentheses below and show your options. Your other options for the D in here would have been the 5 chord and then the 7. Right here for your 1, remember we had either the 1 chord or we had the 4 or the 6. So you can write these up there as secondary options and then go back and later change them if you want. Right here, let's look at the notes. The top line of the treble clef is going to be the F. So right below that, we have an E. Oh, my hands are dirty. All right, so we have E, D, C, A. Does that make sense there? E, D, C, A. Well, that's much prettier. Then we have a D, C, A. And then we're going to be playing down to the E. Is that right? No, the G. So that seems very pentatonic. Pentatonic scales are using 5 notes of the possible 7 that are correlating to our key signature. So when we move through this, we've got a descending line. Well, this is a secondary motif. Here's our first motif. This is our second motif. Now, one of the things that happens with motifs like this, they become very, very, very stagnant. You do not want to have stagnant notes which go like over. If you had one note repeating the whole time, it would become very stagnant. In fact, I despise this double G here because I feel like it's stagnant. I would definitely want to change that if I was playing this and putting it into something else, depending on what the chords are. However, that's over-analysis. Right here, our descending line, let's see if any chords sound good. What note is that? That's an E, D, we have a C, and then an A. So E, D, C, and A. Let's write it out. E, D, C, A. Do any of these make a chord? Well, if we had A, C, and E, that'd be an A minor. That's pretty cool. If we had F, A, C, that would be an F major. That's one note off, so maybe if we could change that, that has an implied F. That could feel kind of like this. Well, that's an F major 7 if you don't include there. It's just a minor. I think maybe an F major 7 would be good there. Let's write it as our A minor, as our 6th chord, and see how it sounds, and then maybe go back to that 4 chord and play it as a 4 major 7 to include the A minor, stacking 2 of those triads again on top of each other. Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Here, central theme again, except for we've changed a note here. We've got it down lower. Well, if we were trying to examine maybe an A, maybe we go to G. And since we're playing an F and an A minor together, both of those triads together when stacked make an F major 7. Well, stands to reason if we were to do that with G major and E minor, it would give us an E minor 7 or a G 6. Is that right? Yeah, G6 or an E minor 7. I think that works great. So let's throw that there. We'll do our 3. And then we could also put in parentheses here our 5 chord played as a 6. That gives us an inversion. 6 chord, we could have it as an A minor. Just maybe as a 5 there. Like 6. All right, next thing we're going to have is a G, G. And then we're going A, C, and then back to 1. Cool. It looks as if this song wants to go back to the tonic or the root. What we would consider this song through this passage is called a cadence. So our cadence is going to go through and then end on the 1 chord. When we end on our 1 chord, we would be considering the kind of concept of this done. This one right here would correlate. I think this is a great chord. We have a G, G, and an A and a C. There's something called a major or a minor harmonic progression series. When we do that, we follow a certain grouping of notes, like a minor third loves to go to a 6. 6 loves to go to a 2 or a 4. 4 is going to love to go to a 5 dominant or a 7. And then that generally likes to go back to the 1. So if we're going to go to the 1, I'd like to use either the 5 as a 5 dominant or the diminished. At this point, let's just use the diminished, so we use that B diminished, B, D, F. The way that I chose that is I used a chord correlating to a harmonic progression rather than the notes that are in there. Reason being, any note you play in the key is going to sound good over any chord you do in a melody. Why? None of those notes that you're choosing for a melody are outside of that key. Right on. Glad you're good, Jeff. I think I saw you maybe on Vance's channel the other day. That's a fun channel. I like his acoustic stuff. It's really cool. All right, so what we're just going to see right here is the conclusion of this. This is how I would do a melody. I would use my major or my minor harmonic progression series to view what chords work well. Does this follow that? Well, the 1 goes to a 2. Well, this is how this series works. A lot of these can have fun moving. 1 to 2. That definitely works. 2 went to a 6. That went backwards. Well, how about the 4 as a major 7? Equal? Yeah, that works. Do. Back to our starting position. And then it goes to the diminished and then back to the 1. That follows the major harmonic progression, except for that 1 movement, but rules are meant to be broken. What I could suggest to somebody who's doing this for the first time is when you're following along and doing this at home, trying to write your own melodies, start off super slow, write down your circle of fifths on what key you're going to be playing in, find out what your relative majors are, relative minors, and your diminished, write your triads out, assign them Roman numerals, go back through your piece and find where you want to layer your notes. Long and flowing and legato, or short and detached. Maybe we can add some staccato notes to these phrasings so they go super, super quick. Putting a dot right above the staff, right above the note, lets me as the player know that those notes are now not going to be long and flowing or just at normal pace. They are going to be very short and detached. The chords we put underneath here, I think I'm going to choose that F. So we're going to have our F here. Let's drop it right here. Here's our F. We're going to stack these. And then I want a major 7th. So we're going to go all the way up, put that there. That's going to follow through. It changes here, but we're going to keep that stationary. We're going to drop down the F to the E. So we could have the E, F, G, and then B. I'd like to see this as a, we'll see it as an inversion. Cool. Actually, we'll see it as a second version. All right, and now we're going to move to here, play B diminished in its root position. So we're going to have our B, we're going to go down lower than here, down to an octave. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F. And that's going to correlate with that G up top, B, D, F, and a G. That's going to give us a B dim with a, what is that? Is that really a 6? Fun. Cute. Here's what it's going to sound like. I hope you can follow along if you have your instrument of choice, and hopefully it's not too smooshed. Fun. Put that into a little program while I'm writing that. It's not the best of melodies. Actually, I wasn't setting off to make a perfect melody. I just wanted to have something that was contextually there. That's a great start to being able to see our notes on a staff, be accustomed to what notes go in here, and then look at what we did right or wrong. A lot of these could have been even considered accidental notes or superfluous grace notes. Notes that don't necessarily be there, but they go through. We added a lot of dynamic markings like staccatos, legatos. Overall, we had a piece that was supposed to be played mezzo piano and had a little bit of feeling to it. So when we play that with those dynamics, rather than hustling through it, we'd have... This is a little louder. Great chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I would do is I would go back through there. Oh, that one did record. Cool. Let's hear what it sounds like through Dorco. Hello. How are you? Come on. Good. Welcome.
Oh, I thought you were somebody in here.
No, I do online courses for a channel as well.
I see.
Cool. Well, that was fun enough. I hope you enjoyed this. If so, thumbs up, put something cool in the comment section, and we'll see you again for our next adventure. Aloha.